Welcome to Afro Comic Con. This panel is called the Producers of TV and Film, and this is for the virtual 2020 event. And thank you all for joining us today. Please consider donating to the Afro Comic Con slash Moonshot Junior program, where funds go to young girls of color to go through a 12-month program where they will learn tech skills, innovation, uh, product development, and entrepreneurial skills. Please go to afrocomiccon.org and make your donation today. Now, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as I said this before, this is the producers of TV and film. I would like to introduce you to my panel. With me today is Mr. Monty Ross. Hello,
Hey,
Monty. How are you
hey,
doing?
all right, all right.
Quick little intro. What have you done in the world of TV and film, sir?
Uh, Thanks for having me here, and really excited to be here in the world of film and television. I'm primarily known as the guy who was Spike Lee's first producer, and with that came, a myriad of many projects, ranging from Do the Right Thing, Mo Better Blues, She's Gotta Have It. And a lot of people don't know I was also in Spike's thesis film, Joe's Bed-Stuy Barbershop, We Cut Heads, as a lead actor. And I became vice president of production and went on and did a number of things. Also, I got a chance to do a story on Adam Clayton Powell Jr., one of the foremost congressmen and ministers out of Harlem, New York. And now I've got a chance to work with like many, many young folks who are doing excellent work, with Sharnice Fox, Wes Miller, Menelik Lumumba, and we're here at Solidify Productions, and not to mention, we are here in Richmond, Virginia, growing. We've completed 8 films now in a period of the last 4 years, and we're continuing to growing. A lot of opportunities. BK Fulton is our founder and CEO, and he makes things happen and in a much big way. And basically, I love what I do. I have tried to be in corporate America, just didn't work.
Well, while you're sitting here, like talking about the past, how about let's get to the rest of the panel? How about Mr. Marcus King is now here to join us as well too.
Hey. How you doing, Arash?
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you, Marcus. So, what TV and film have you produced for us to all know?
Well, I don't know if anyone would know because it's so old, but I started my career actually at Showtime at the Apollo.
Oh, how dare you talk about my neighborhood
television Showtime. I worked with the Sutton family and Don Weiner, and that was like my first cutting of my teeth right there in Harlem. And I went on to get into the sitcom business from television. I did a show called Hanging with Mr. Cooper, which was my first foray. And I want to do some other shows that didn't last as long. But the Jamie Foxx show, we had a pretty good run with that one. And just a lot of comedy specials and festivals, and really dwelled in the comedy business. And that business actually took me to film and music and even radio. So, I've done a myriad of things. I feel like I'm a jack of all trades. Some knew me as a manager. And then when the gray hair started to overcome me, I gave up the manager hat and just became producing partners because you get fewer grays with turn your phone off. So that's what I've done in a snapshot, and I won't eat up anybody else's time.
No, that's plenty. And thank you for hanging with Mr. Cooper. I love basketball and I love that show very much. So thank you for producing that. Also with us in the panel today is Mule Case. How are you today?
Yes, Yule Case, like Yule Tide. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be back doing another panel at Afro Comic Con. I think this is my third year or something.
There you
go. Third time.
Take it over.
No. I'm a writer, director, producer. In the kind of Comic-Con world, people knew me from the show Heroes on NBC, and I was the producer who made all the kind of interactive content. I was the first person kind of doing that in that space, and we made their first live action web series, wrote some of the comic books, and created their first interactive graphic novel for them and stuff like that. But my background as a writer, director, and producer, I came out here originally. Somebody was mentioning comedy. I came out here originally with Robert Townsend, is how I came to Los Angeles. And then I worked with Robert off and on for a number of years, and worked on the Parenthood series with him as well. And then I worked a long time also with Mr. Sidney Poitier. And Sidney starred in a movie I wrote a long time ago with he and Felicia Rashad called Free of Eden. And so Sidney was kind of my mentor and really still set the standard of the experience of a wonderful working experience, just with a kind of an iconic figure. And through him, obviously, met a lot of other people. My company, Behind the Billboards, we do a lot of development and international co-production, and I've had the good fortune to kind of live and travel around the world. And one of the projects I'm currently doing, I'm doing James Baldwin in Paris, which is kind of a U.S., French, UK co-production. And then I'm also doing
kind of interesting because you have a James Baldwin book right behind you.
Yeah, because I just had to turn stuff in. I've been living in 1948 to 50 Paris for the past year. And also we have a animated series called Futurex, which is an Afro-futuristic animated show that we're doing a panel on, developing the animated series from A to Z. And so that's kind of working its way right now. I'm doing that with Maya Williams, who's a sister who she was out of the whole kind of Matt Groening and Futurama camp, and she was actually a producer back on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air way back in the day. And we actually both happen to be from the Bay Area, where Afro Comic-Con is born. It was a nice chance to get to try to work together on something. So Futurex is primarily what I'm up to right now.
Very nice. And of course, we have to finish off our panel with Mr. Rodney Barnes. Hello, Rodney. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Please tell us what projects have you worked on in TV and film?
Mostly television. I started as a writer-producer on My Wife and Kids for ABC, Everybody Hates Chris, The Boondocks, Wu-Tang and American Saga, more recently, American Gods, Vinyl for HBO. What else? A bunch of other sitcoms in between and other things. I'm currently working at HBO on a Lakers scripted drama that should hopefully drop next year. I'm doing a mini-series on Tiger Woods. I have a movie at New Regency I'm writing and producing. 2 series at HBO Max that I'm writing and producing. And a bunch of comic books. And
nice. If you finish your comic books, send them over to me, and I have no problem reviewing them and letting people know where to get your books and everything too. Let's get things started, everyone. I guess we'll start with Monty and work our way down with Yule. How old were you when you guys first started, and was it a production position that you guys got, or was it something else? Monty, let's start with you.
We started right in college, and this is right around the time that because I went to the HBCU. I graduated from Clark College, which is now Clark Atlanta University. But and Clark was one of the first universities, African American universities, to have a mass communications department. So this was right around the time when that became, very, very popular. And the fact that you could actually major in film or have a career in journalism was just very exciting to many of us. And so Spike took his classes there. I took classes there. And
what college was this again, so everyone knows?
The college, Clark. Today is Clark Atlanta University. It merged with the graduate school there, and back in '88. But it was Clark College back in the day, and the interesting thing about all of that was I was an actor, so I spent 99% of my time acting. But my buddies happened to be, Samuel L. Jackson, his wife. Back then she was a girlfriend, LaTanya Richardson. Kenny Leon, who was one of our former directors for film and theater. He was one of my buddies. And then on weekends, summer breaks, spring breaks, Angela Bassett, who was dating Kenny at the time, would come up and hang out. So this was all pre anything, but it was so interesting about that. But Spike would come to the theater and watch us do plays, and he was taking meticulous notes, and nobody knew that he was taking notes. And so that was the era. That was the era, and I think that was like mid '70s, going into the '80s, and we started on 8mm film.
Right.
Figured out 8mm film, went to 16, eventually get to 35, and then work our way through the industry. So the big break happened. I gave up acting and went behind the scenes, and I was production supervisor on She's Gotta Have It. And that was the film where Spike and I worked together really, really well. He handled all the creative. I handled all the, business decisions, and we got the film made in 12 days. And it helped launch our career. But I would say we were like, 26, 27, around there. And so that's when it started. And I must say, even today, She's Gotta Have It. I still get a royalty check from She's Gotta Have It, and that was the first one that just that broke through. But again, I always thank Chris Blackwell, music impresario who had Island Records, reggae music, Bob Marley. He started Island Pictures. But from that one film, any class that I teach, I always teach that to students because it has proven to weather the storm throughout all the years. Netflix picked it up for 2 seasons. So that was it. We were in our 20s, man, and trying to figure it out. And when we finally did She's Gotta Have It, that was the film that helped us launch our career.
Nice. Marcus, how old were you when you first started, and were you a producer, or was it a different position?
How old was I?
Sir, how old were you?
I was 8 years old. And at the young age of 8 years old, I was, no, I'm kidding. I don't remember how old I was, but I started in the comedy business in the Bay Area, Yule. And I'm actually in the Bay Area, and I got to be more specific. In Oakland, California, I started producing comedy shows, and that kind of morphed into my television experience. And the Apollo Theater gave me a real crash course on what live television was. So I learned that right as I was coming out of the comedy experience. And I got a taste of variety and what that felt like. And an idea of what live television was and how to kind of shoot and literally shoot or get shot kind of on the run. And from there, I went into sitcoms because I managed actors, comedians that were at that time in the mid 80s, early 90s. Sitcom, stand-up comedy to sitcom was the thing, was the transition, was the success story. So I cut my producing teeth at Warner Brothers, where we did the show Hanging with Mr. Cooper. And I learned around a lot of pretty good producers, I think, from the Bickley Warren camp and, what we were doing there. And that was kind of cool. And then I kind of learned how to do my own thing and start, like young Rodney Barnes there, did an overall deal with Warner Brothers and started bringing in some of my own shows. One of those shows was the Jamie Foxx show, because at that time I represented Jamie Foxx. And I have to say this for the record, we had a deal at NBC, but some executive at NBC said Jamie Foxx wasn't a star. And
look at him now. He's about to do a second Spider-Man movie. Look who's laughing now.
Yeah, they're out of a job. So politely took that deal over to Warner Brothers, and we did some years on that show. That was fun, and I did a lot of shows, a lot of HBO specials and stand-up specials in between. I did a comedy festival, and I'm very familiar with Clark College and their media film department, because when we would do our Laugh-A-Palooza Comedy Festival, we would base it in Atlanta, and we'd always do seminars, and the only media studies program there was Clark College, and all the other colleges kind of morph around what's happening there. And down in that library media, we would do all our seminars for the kids there. So that was a great experience doing that festival that we did for 14 years at different. And we would showcase we would call it the pro show on different networks, from HBO to Showtime, Comedy Central. So we sold the show a few times to a few people, and we were able to make a lot of young comedians that you guys probably know now, from the Kevin Harts and the Nick Cannons and the Chris Tuckers, and I could just keep going on and on. But at that time, we wanted to be a parallel to what was happening at the Montreal Comedy Festival. And we kind of had a void, especially with African American stand-ups, because they didn't get that opportunity to go up to Montreal and show the networks their thing. And what's kind of funny to me is that when we told all the agencies and network execs, hey, we're doing this big festival and you have to come to Atlanta, they used to tell me, do we have to go way down to Atlanta? And look how things have changed. So it's pretty amazing how things have changed. And that kind of got me into more film business, especially representing Jamie Foxx at that time, where we were really trying to kind of tell some stories on the film side and find some good directors to work with. So we were fortunate enough to get that done, and then ease our music into some of the films, because these big time music producers don't understand the value. Maybe they do now that the record business is gone, but the value of immersing your music through moving picture that sustains music way beyond, radio and record sales. So now they're getting it now, because you see these big producers coming in television and film. So I think the industry is changing in a pandemic way all across the board, and we'll see where it ends up.
Right. Rodney, how old were you when you started, and what was your first project that you worked on?
Late teens, early 20s. I was a student at Howard University, and I was working as a production assistant on movies that would come to the area and do glamour shots. And eventually it led me to Virginia, where I worked on a movie, Major Payne. And I met Damon Wayans. And after a couple of days, it's like we were the only brothers there. So we ended up talking, and he just said, what do you want to do in the business? It can't just be doing this. And I said, no, I want to be a writer.
Right. And
so for the next 2 years, he let me follow him around the country, sleep in my car, and work on his movies, and which led me to LA. I worked on a movie, Bulletproof. I'm actually in that movie about to rape Adam Sandler. And Damon said,
you look familiar in that movie.
Yeah, there you go. So Damon said, this commuting, because I was commuting from Maryland to California. Like I would, he called me on a Thursday and said, if you can be here by Monday, you got a job. So
driving or flying?
No, I was driving. I would take 3 days. I didn't sleep. And so he said that after Bulletproof, he said, if you really want to be a writer in Hollywood, this commute thing, it's not going to work. You're going to have to move here. And, but I was afraid because I didn't know anybody. But eventually I packed up my stuff, came to LA, lived in my car for like 8 months, started working on other movies in the area, worked on Blade and the Rush Hour movies and a few other things. And then ultimately, Damon had to show my wife and kids. And he gave me a shot. He said, I'll give you 1 day as a punch-up writer. And I just kept coming back. And eventually they gave me a deal, and it all sort of worked out from there.
Yes, congratulations. That was what is it? 6, 7 seasons for that show?
We did 6 seasons. We could have had a 7th. That's a long story for another day. But yeah, we did 6 seasons. We did. It was I still get a check too from time to time. So there you go.
Joel, how old were you when you started, and what was your first project?
Well, I started, I guess, pretty young. I grew up working as an actor as a kid, and I was on a show called Up and Coming, which was kind of one of the early, early. It was the only black show on the air really at the time, and Stan Lathan was our main director, and and a lot of people came through that show. So that's how I met Lawrence Fishburne. He was one of the guest stars. Danny Glover, Esther Roll, Brock Peters, and I was the kid in the family. I was the youngest son in the family on the show. And then famously, my sister on the show went on to become one of the lead singers for the band In Vogue, Cindy Heron. And Robert Townsend used to be always, I think he had a mad crush on her, as many did, but we went to our prom, but and he would, I forget where I met him. He was hanging around once. This is before he was famous, and he was like, I think trying to talk to Cindy, but he was always really nice to me. And I had gone off to college. It ended up at Harvard, which was a strange long trip from my kind of Berkeley, very unconventional family upbringing. We were kind of steeped, kind of a child of the Black Panther Party, essentially, or raised in the shadow of and stuff. My mom was a student at Berkeley, and so we kind of came from this kind of activist type of trail.
I would say different field then, right? Going from Berkeley all the way to Harvard.
It was a completely. I didn't know how different it was until I got there. It was like, it's very funny because they would give kids from who either couldn't afford to go home or were from foreign countries, or as I like to say, Berkeley was considered a foreign territory at that time in my era growing up. And so that's how I ended up with kind of this old Boston family as my kind of host family in that scenario. But so I ended up getting to Harvard, met a friend of mine who had said, "Hey, I remember you, kid." And this guy he said, "I'm working on a film and we should be friends." And he was several years older than I was, and that was Reggie Hudlin. And then I had made a film called Shoes in college, which ended up on TV. And it ended up on A&E, PBS, BET. Back then, I don't know, I was selling it wherever they would take it. And Robert saw that, Townsend had saw that, and he called me up, and I was doing I was working in documentaries and stuff at the time, and I was doing some work with Henry Hampton. I don't know if anybody remembers him. He created Eyes on the Prize. And Robert said, "Hey, would you write something for me? I want to do something on Oscar Michaud." And he said, "If you come to LA, the first 6 months is on me." And I was like, really? And that's how I ended up in LA, kind of taking a flyer on it. That was a big gamble just to show up. And but curiously, a lot of people remembered that show, and so there was just a lot of it. Did make some things a little bit easier because I was too young to make any enemies back then, as when I was a kid actor, And so that's how I started. And I'd grown up working in theater, and so I kept doing theater, and still sometimes write plays, and still am involved with theater because I think that's just a really great place for people to start. No matter what you want to do, it's just a good place to be. And then it's been a long, winding journey ever since. Hasn't always taken me the route that I expected it would, and it ebbs and flows. And if you're in it for the long haul, then That's the one main thing I learned from working with Sidney, with Mr. Poitier, was he would always tell me, and now it finally kind of comes back. He would say, hey, the rewards are in the journey, kid. And I was like,
well, here's a follow-up question, and I'll start with you, Yul. During this journey, what seems to be a little easier? Has there always been an easy path, or has there always been like that one difficult path getting to where you want to be?
It's never been the easy path. I would like to say my biggest advice is acting for me had come easy, and I loved it. That's like was my first love. And because it came easy, I didn't know that you could do things that were just enjoyable or that just gave you joy. And that's what I really kind of came back to. So I was like, whoa, I've got to, like, when I went to Harvard, I first started majoring in things that I thought I had to major in, because they were created suffering or something. And then I was like, no, but I like telling stories. So why don't you, I wish I could go back and tell myself, just do the things that you like to do, because you'll be better at it, and you'll find more joy in it, and you will be successful. So I spent a lot of time, I think, trying to, I've had a couple different companies, and we were in the kind of indie film game for a long time, raising, private equity financing for indie films. And that's a fine business if you have a trust fund, but that's not how that's not how it works. No. 6 years living in a basement. So that wasn't it. So, just do the things that it's okay if something comes easy to you, or that's where you find the joy, but there's many paths to it, as long as you are willing to kind of go with the flow.
Yes. Rodney, I take it your journey has not been easy, but would you have taken an easy route to where you've become now?
No, I think it's almost like lifting weights, the free weights, like the muscles sometimes that you have to use to balance the weight. They come from the extra exertion. And I think having the ups and downs and having things not work out and having to develop the emotional endurance with hearing the word no a lot and not having things go your way, I think it creates a certain toughness that I think is necessary to come with the business. And I've been doing it for a while now, know Marcus from back in the day. And anytime you have a journey and you're still standing after a while, usually those scars are the ones that build up a degree of character. So I don't think there's anything that I would change. I say that now. If you asked me a couple of years ago, I probably there's a lot that I change. But for right now, things are looking pretty good, and I'm happy with where I am. So, but yeah.
Marcus, same question, similar to Yul. What were some of your, was it the easy way? Would you take the hard way? What way would you prefer as far as being like the work that you've done?
Arash, I'm not sure that there is an easy way in this game, especially for the gentlemen that are on this panel.
Right.
I'm sure when we walked down whatever halls or corridors we had to walk down, we didn't see anyone that looked like us. We have never, I put it to you like this, the four of us have never walked down a hallway together.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's an industry of folks who did walk down the hallway together and know each other.
So like Yul, I do have, my upbringing in Oakland was as part of the Panther Party environment. And I'll give you an example that people think when they see a film or they see a project eventually come out, they think, oh, yeah, it's glamorous and all of that. But for example, I worked on this project, Ray, and, I was complaining about the time that it was taking to get to theaters and get the production going. But the producers that brought the project to us, they had been working on this project for 14 years. And once they told me that, I had to shut up.
Right.
Project, as Yul talked about the Black Panther Party, it's taken me and hopefully he doesn't see this, but it's taken me 4 years to convince Bobby Seale, the founder, to finally tell his story.
Okay.
So we have been working on, once that 4 years of trust, and he's known me since I was a child, once that 4 years of trust dissipated, now we're cool. Now it's taken us another 2 or 3 years to find the situation that we want, and we're still in search. So I don't think that there is an easy way. I think the adoration is when you get into the Rodney Barnes area, where they start shoveling money at you.
There you go. There you go.
That's some reward. Or you have somebody like Monty Ross call you and say, hey, come speak to my class. I'll buy you lunch. That's all you want, man. See how the job at the same moment?
Especially from your beginnings, were those beginnings difficult for getting some of the movies and films off the ground?
Yeah. Like everyone is saying on the panel, very difficult, extremely difficult. And but I think one of the joys of work, yeah, especially in our business, you know, whether it's the performing arts or some form of the arts. What I love about film is you get a chance to put everyone together, so you get a chance to draw on everyone's strength. And I can see myself when I started, you know, doing more producing, being really like, you know, stringent and tight on the budget, right?
Right.
And everything had to line up, everything, you know. And then Wynn Thomas is one of the, you know, great production designers. Pulled me to the side, and Wynn goes, Monty, listen. What you got to understand is, I know things are really tight, but I can really make this set answer any question as soon as the camera goes on about this character. And those little jewels that he began to drop, I began to then figure out that my role as a producer was to then understand how each key department person worked and what they needed. And even though we didn't have money, it was creative thinking, right? And so for me, being around that environment, right, especially being around an Ernest Dickerson, and Ernest was always, you know, hand on his chin, you know, okay, let me get Monty, order 3 of this, 4 of this. I'm going to get this kind of cable, blah, 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 right? And even though all of this is all micro, you know, all of this is, but at the same time, to watch this whole team work. So it taught me as a producer that I had to really open up and listen and really see the results that each one of the key members of the team was creating and going for. And sure enough, to walk on a set and actually see, like Wednesday, you see this bed? Now, on She's Gotta Have It, that was a custom-made bed on She's Gotta Have It, because he knew the guy, the carpenter, who wanted to make something like that. So the long story short, to me, you know, each one of these films, all of our films and projects, to me, they each have something. And to me, if you're totally open, you know, if you're totally open to learning, there's always something that you can learn and enjoy about this whole entire process. And, you know, award shows, the big limousines, all of that stuff is great. You know, when you finally start making money, it's like, oh my God, whoo! It's, you know, all of that is great. But if I had to really look at this journey from hard to where it is now, I would have to say that learning that there's artistic integrity in working with people who teach you more and help you really figure out those creative challenges that you have. And when you step back and look at the work and you see the work still holds up, to me, that's the joy. That's the joy right there. That's the joy. And then the industry begins to say, hey, I want to work with you, because they know you firmly understand how to bring out the best in people.
Yeah.
And then I'm not saying it's easier, no, but the fact that the industry knows that you know how to get in there, work with folks, and bring out the best. And at the end of the day, that's really what we can really hope for, and each department does their thing.
Well, unfortunately, someone on this panel must leave us very shortly because he has other things to do. You have to leave us. I'm very sorry about that. But
I have
right
to take
before
my
you
son
go,
to his practice. Yeah.
that's pretty much that's okay. But before you go, do you have any message you want to tell anyone when it comes to production or film wise, production wise, anything, any positive message? Also, what projects are you working on currently that we should be looking forward to?
Well, you should certainly, the Afro Comic-Con crowd should certainly be looking forward to Futurex, which is our animated series that takes place in 100 years in the future in Obama land, formerly Oakland. After climate change has ravaged the earth and, the heat has gone up, and those with less melanin in their skin did not survive what we call the melanin apocalypse, or the Black folks call it melapocalypse.
You're gonna get arrested, man.
He's fine.
So that's what I'm working on right now. And then James Baldwin in Paris is totally on the opposite side of it, but and I'm doing that with a wonderful cinematographer who's going to be the director, named Bradford Young, who's the first Black DP. Shouldn't have been, but the first Black DP nominated for an Oscar for Arrival. Ernest should have had one back in the day. And so that's really pleased to get to work with him, and several those are the two projects that are currently really most front and center. And I would just say to anybody else, don't be afraid to do all the jobs or to learn what it is. I in downtimes, I used to, I had been produced a couple indie features, and then I was like, I'm broke. I started hiring myself out as a first AD, and then I've done first, second, all the different things, just because it kept me a little bit in the loop. And I knew that when I'm at the point I am now with Behind the Billboards and with our company, I wanted to know that I have done all those different. I've worked in the art department. I wasn't very good, right? But I know what it is like to have to schlep and do that stuff and be there all those hours. And so those are things. They're character building, but they also give you knowledge, or just kind of it's all useful. And that's the wonderful thing about our industry, is that it's a place where everything you can eventually use, and you have to embrace that. And I just really hope that I get to work with some of the people on this panel, and Monty, I studied you because I was working with Tommy Redmond Hicks back in the day.
Buck dancer,
yeah. And we were co-writing stuff together. And anyway, I'm just a big fan of everybody on this panel, and I please get my email. It's just my name.
Awesome.
And Gmail, and I would really just.
One more thing before you go. Before you go. What was the one project that you saw that you would say, wow, I'm finally here?
I would have to say working on Heroes was pretty spectacular, just because of Tim Kring, the creator, had brought me over there just to he said, make some stuff, and that stuff then started to blow up, but then to see how international juggernaut hit, like to actually see how that happens, and to see the full weight of NBC behind something. I wish I had created it, but was a
part of it. But the fact that you're part of it makes all the difference.
And it took one of the people on the lot. It was one of the attendants. It was a brother who used to see me come in every day, and he told me, "Oh my gosh, they painted your name on a parking spot." And from the place on the parking spot, they had it set up that I could look at my name on that parking spot and the Hollywood sign. And at that moment, I said, oh my gosh, I think I made it, or at least feeling it. And then, now I've been in search of that again. No, but
Hey, I will tell you this before you go. Comic-Con, because of you, you have tons of kids to this day that constantly cosplay at all the heroes of that show. So you know what? That legacy will always live on. And if you go into a Comic-Con, I will guarantee 2 or 3 kids dressed as one of those characters.
Yeah, and very funny. My son, who I'm about to take, Echo, he was one of the first characters I got to create for that show.
Wow.
He started in a comic book and then became on the show, and that was really something I wanted to leave at least some tiny bit of legacy for, to know that, if he so chooses, you're steeped in it. You were a comic character. Anyhow,
thank you, you all. You have a wonderful day.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Let's go with Marcus. Same question. When did you know that I'm finally here? I belong here.
I don't know that yet. What? I don't think you ever find that kind of comfort. I don't, at least. That I always think I belong wherever I am, because no one put me there but God. But in terms of the industry, I think my first opportunity of driving on a lot, that's an important thing. When you're not getting escorted off somewhere or chased off somewhere, you actually, like Yul said, you see your name on that parking spot. And that's when I felt like, okay, I can be effective here. I've come a long way and struggled my way up, and I learned a lot, but I spent more time trying to learn than trying to know everything, because it would have been easy for me just to be positioned and leveraged into situations where, because I'm somebody's manager now, I get a pass with a credit and all of that. But I never did that because I was a producer before I was a manager.
Right.
And it was I was a concert promoter at one time. So I was a street promoter and I was a street guy first. And it was an ugly grind. It wasn't sexy. So when I actually got to drive on a lot and saw my name on a curb, that was everything. And I didn't want to waste that opportunity. So I became a student at that time of how to produce television, so I could learn it inside out and know exactly, what I wanted to do and the stories I wanted to tell. And I'm still kind of waiting for that opportunity, because we have a myriad of stories to tell. And even when Rodney and I get together, when we bump into each other, we sit there, we might be waiting for our cars or something to pull up or whatever, but we sit there and we talk about all the stories that haven't been told.
Yeah. I feel like between the 3 of you, there's enough stories to go around for the next 15 to 20 years, especially with all of your journeys that you guys have gone through.
Man, it's not even it's culturally, what's absent in the storytelling of the fabric of not only this country but the world. And I think we have great stories to tell that it'll go way beyond us. So when I really knew I made it, when I saw my daughter's credit. My daughter's a producer on the show Jesus and Meryl.
Oh, nice.
I didn't teach her anything. She gets nothing from me. But when I saw my daughter, my youngest, graduate from film from Sarah Lawrence, and then my oldest producing a television show, and them both not needing to leverage, anything that their mom or dad did, and them kind of do it on their own, then I really felt I made it.
Yeah. That's a great feeling to see your kids go for just beyond what you're capable of, in a way, correct?
Yeah, I can get a better loan from them than I can.
Rodney, what's some of your projects that you're most fond of?
Oh my God. I was prepared to answer the other question. Most fond of, the ones that I'm working on right now, really, the Lakers. When you think about the Lakers, we start in the 80s with the Dr. Buss, Magic Johnson, Kareem Lakers, which was when I was first into basketball, as a player and as a fan. And so to be able to tell the story of how sports and media and race and culture sort of converged at the same time, it's a rare opportunity to get a lot of different interests together in one show. It's an honor to be able to be working on it. So I'd say that. I mean, I dig Tiger Woods as well. His father was certainly a character, and being able to talk about the 40s and 50s and race during Kansas in that period of time. And I mean, virtually everything that I'm working on right now, there's a degree of an emotional connection to it. And I think if there's anything that I appreciate from having gone through this journey, like I've done a lot of jobs I didn't want to have to do in order to make ends meet, and to finally be in a place where everything I'm sort of involved in are things that I either chose or they were chosen with me in mind, so that I feel more connected to the material than I ever have. So as a writer, I think my best work comes from when I'm emotionally connected to the material, more so than if I'm doing it because I got to keep the lights on. And fortunately, that's where I am at the moment.
Hey,
Awesome.
let's keep those lights on.
We got to keep them on. I got kids.
Yes, you got. Monty, you've probably seen twice as much as what everyone else has seen. Everything. Is this the time for more true story writing, true storytelling? Let's just say from the 50s, from the 60s, and from the 70s up until today. Where does current stories lie?
I'd say as far as story to me always is from a place of truth, where writers aren't afraid to pull back and expose, and they are afraid. They're not afraid to tell, a truth, or to lead us toward a path, of truth. And it's just very evident when you watch movies, like Christopher Nolan. Okay, but me and Tenet, I wanted to like it more. Especially during COVID-19.
Okay.
Okay, I wanted to like it more.
Understood.
But on the flip side, I'm still waiting for season 4 of Ozark at this particular time, And one of the reasons why is, I can't, it's COVID-19. I need to connect. I've watched.
You need a stronger connection, and you're not feeling that stronger connection.
Because we left the way we left Ozark. We gotta go. Come on, Netflix. I love everything that you're doing, but I'm just simply saying that all that to say is that there's a lot of stuff out there, and every writer who sits down to write, of course they're going for their truth, but certain things resonate, certain writers resonate, just because they have something to say. I think one of the things that we are lost on right now, especially in our art and our culture, well, if it's good for this particular artist, then it's good for everyone else, and get me one of those, and give me one of those, because that's hot right now, as opposed to finding the common ground of what works based on truth.
Right.
And we're afraid of. It seems like sometimes our industry gets really afraid of that, and things get to be cookie cutter and that sort of thing. And to me, that's one of the fortunate things. I'm really happy I got a chance to come up through the that independent era, when independent film was accepted. When you could find common ground, but you could seek a certain truth and then go for it, and write it. And the industry was, now I wouldn't say they were open arms, but they were more receptive to it than what we have now. So I would say, like, everyone's trying to figure out how to be the next thing, the next big thing, as opposed to taking that journey to find what works and connect.
Well, let me ask you.
And then eventually it does pay off, and so like I said, to me, I'm always, I'll give you the first 3 pages. If somebody says, "Oh, Mr. Ross, would you read my stuff? Read my stuff." And I'm like, ooh, you know, and I said, what? Send me the first 10 pages. And if the first 10 pages hits me and knocks me out, I want to read the rest. And sometimes I get to page 3 and I'm like, oh man, okay. And I'm sorry I had to tell the person it just didn't take me past that, you know. But whenever there's that writer who I can see they have really taken the time to master their craft and present a degree of truth, oh man, I get excited about that. And I want to continue to work with the writer, and I want to make sure, you know, that we can go on and actually get it, you know, produced. So that's, I mean, that may be old school, but I think it's the best school, you know, because a lot of times when you put these things down and you're sacrificing a lot of your time and your life, and, you know, time is something that's very, 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 very precious, you know, and especially going forward with theaters not being around like they used to be. So now it's really critical. You know,
Yeah, you guys,
with someone, you know what I mean?
Both you and Marcus both says like you guys looking forward to doing stuff on streaming sites. Is this like the new way to go? Is because theaters are so, they're like no one's going to go into movie theaters for quite a while. Is the new focus now on streaming services?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I would say yes. But also, I would also like to say for emerging writers, learn to write for an audience. Learn to really, and I mean, you know, don't forget about yourself in that mix. But I think one of the things is learning. There's a lot of avenues right now. Learn to write, you know, and I think that's what's missing. I think one of the parts that's missing is that everything always winds up on your watch. Everything winds up on a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
When we came up, you know, everything was on a huge screen, so you could see what worked and what didn't work. You know, sitting in that audience, you know, and then sitting behind, you know, that audience, especially on the research screening. You know, we thought we was hot stuff, and then we went to Paramus, New Jersey for the screening of School Days, and some of the audience, man, take that shit out. Spike, take that shit out. And Spike was mad, you know. He said, "Man, this is man." I said, "Spike, shh, come on, man, come on, we gotta take it. You know, we gotta be able to let the audience, you know, have that." So, and sure enough, man, when it got down to the 20 people, you know, to really give you the feedback, man, you know, that same dude was like, I don't even know if Spike is here enough. I want to tell him when it got to this part of the movie and that scene came up, he need to take that shit out. And Spike got all upset. And I said, Spike, come on, man. No, man, I gotta say something. And but I'm just saying, I sometimes I think that cultural exchange is missing, but it teaches you what works and what doesn't work, because at the end of the day, you're learning to work with that audience as well, and the fact that they got to see it on this huge screen, you know, and it communicates a completely different message. I think a large screen television is great, cell phones are great, laptops are great, but there's nothing like that experience of seeing a movie, you know, in a theater to give you a whole different experience about, you know, the work that you created.
Nice. Rodney, since you have a background in comic books and everything, we've seen two major rises when it came to film culture, one being Creed and the next one being Black Panther. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that with this change happening, is this going to continue to happen, or are we looking at, because of Black Panthers is now going to be a mini one-off, we'll say?
It's hard to say. I mean, I remember after Black Panther did so well, got a lot of calls about, you know, man, superheroes are going to be the thing. Black superheroes. Do you have a black superhero? And I think as long as people outside of the culture are evaluating what our culture wants or is interested in, whether superheroes or horror or anything, it makes it really, really tough to make the inroads that I think to capitalize off the moment as greatly as we could. I think the more executives we get of us that are there, and people who really understand the nuance and specificity of what African American culture and people of color culture is. I think that's when you'll get the steady stream of those types of movies there. I think as long as we still have to filter our experience through people who really don't understand our experience, it's going to be hit or miss. Every once in a while, you're going to get a thing that, Ryan Coogler is a craftsman, and I really respect his work. So, the fact that he did those 2 films, I'm not surprised that they did well. But I think through every step of the process, you have to have people who really understand what we spark to, what matters to us. And until we get that across the board, I think it's really, really hard to say that this is the moment that it's going to explode, because it's not dependent upon just primarily us. And I think to a lesser or greater degrees, we have to have a say in the way a story is executed. I know, just working in television for so long, many times when it comes to specificity in African American culture, I've had to do battle with executives and end up in a position where we make a compromise that still is unsettling in the end when you see it on TV. And even if people dig it, you say, yeah, but if you could have only seen what it would have been had I not have to put this note in or not have to do this thing. So to me, the true evolution is when the power makers and the people, the green lighters, are closer to, when diversity hits that area. I think that's when I think things will become more of an even playing field, and you get more of those types of films.
So sooner or later, even though this is progress number 1, this can continue to be stronger and with a long longevity. No, of course.
Yeah, you can't deny that, those steps were taken. That, anytime you make something that's undeniable, undeniably great, that's a new voice and a new thing, you can't just dismiss it. So I think the opportunity is there to continuously do it again. I'm not saying there's not any hope. I'm just saying that across the board, for it to become a regular thing, we have to have us in the mix of the decision makers, and not just the people coming to the table saying, can we please make a thing, or would you please fund our thing, and then somehow have to make a compromise to how it's executed.
True. But unfortunately, we're going to have to come to an end with this. Guys, we'll start with Marcus, then Rodney, we'll end with Monty. Monty, where can we find you, and how can we continue this conversation? And what projects are you working on next?
You can find me at, it's right here, www.solidify.com. I'm president of production there. We've been very fortunate. We've got 8 films that we've completed over these last, 4 years. And I think that my final statement is Rodney, you hit it definitely on the head, is that our culture, that filter, if we can get that filter down and hold it down, I just really believe that we could really tell something tell stories the way, our stories the way they need to be told, in a way that's refreshing and commercial too, and very commercial at the same time. And but by having that charge, by having that, and that's a part of everyone on this panel, their legacies. All of their legacies to me just really say, kids, one form or another. I know we all I know I did. I grew up on those karate movies. Everybody was kung fu fighting. I grew up on, the black exploitation era. I grew up so I grew up, watching Lady Sings the Blues and watching all of that come together. And for me, as a kid from Omaha, Nebraska, it all came together. And I said, man, that is so beautiful when you can really express yourself and present it, to America in a way that they say, they nod their heads and they begin to get it. So lots of stuff going on. Looking forward to some other great things happening. Thanks for having me here on the panel, man. And I'll turn it over to these 2 gentlemen right here.
Yes, Rodney, where can we find you, and what projects are you working on next?
You can find me on Twitter at the Rodney Barnes. I'm doing a Tiger Woods miniseries, the Lakers scripted series, and a whole bunch of comic books and other things. You'll probably find me at Marcus King's house because that's the hottest place to be. You want to have a good time. Now, everybody listening, if you ever want to have a good time, you want to hang with Marcus King. You don't do all of that promoting and not know how to have a party. So Marcus King's house is where, if not Twitter, Marcus King's house.
All right.
And head up on the West Coast to go to Marcus King's house. Marcus, yes. where can we find you, and what projects are you working on next?
Well, let me say this. I don't really have a way, and I don't really want to be found, but if you are trying to find me, that was for the IRS. But if you are trying to find me, you can find me on Instagram. Probably DM me at Marcus King 2644. But I do want to say this about Black Panther, because Ryan Coogler is a fellow Oaklander, so I gotta lift him up. If we pay attention to that film. And I was talking about, and you was talking about this as well, the Black Panther Party. Mm-hmm. That was a story about the Black Panther Party. If you know that one character wanted to work with a political system and another character wanted to tear it down. And it emanated from Oakland, just like the Panther Party. So I was very happy to see a lot of people that don't look like us intrigued and entertained by a story they didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
If you understand that story and if you know your history, then he tied that into a Marvel film geniusly to me. So I'm happy that those stories are getting told, and hopefully we can tell some of the other stories, because it's the fabric to our culture and who we are in this country.
All right.
So
one more question for you guys before we all go. Me, as a first generation born and raised here, what is one movie that you all recommend me to watch to understand the culture? Marcus, let's start with you.
Oh, don't start with me.
Yeah, I'm glad he started with you.
I don't know. I don't think there's their one film. I don't think, I love some films at different time periods. Like, tell me when Mo Better Blues came out.
Okay, Mo Better Blues.
I was Bleak. I was Bleak all day. I was in jazz. I loved it. I loved the music form. I love the story of the Miles Davis. I can't think of the other.
Shadow.
Thank you.
Yeah, Shadow. Yeah.
Shadow and Bleak.
Shadow and Bleak. Right.
Go on at it.
Yeah. If you know your history between the sax and the trumpet, it was always a battling dynamic in bands like that, and they had to split off and do their own thing. So you want to kind of march through history and not look at like one film to point to. Just look at directors and how they storytell.
Okay. Yeah. Rodney, what film would you recommend?
I'm going to go in the honor of Monty Ross. I'm going to say always do the right thing. So do the right thing. I'm going to stay in that vein because, it had everything. The writing was on point, the cinematography, the acting. It was, it was everything that you want a great film to be.
If I remember correctly, it was all about the sneakers.
Yeah, but it was everything that a great film should be. So I'm going to go. That's going to be my recommendation.
Do the right thing. Monty.
I'm gonna piggyback that and say when it comes to race and what's going on, I would say do the right thing is that film. And just look, one last thing. The thing about Spike's writing style back then was Spike would conceive the idea, think about the idea, and then go do as much research as possible, get these 3x5 cards and write out the scenes that he wanted to see in the film, neatly arrange those cards, and then hand write the script, right? So he hand wrote Do the Right Thing, literally, and then he turned it in and it got typed, that sort of thing. But I say that one of the things Spike always said, he said, "Man, I just want Black people to talk. I want them to leave the theater and talk about what the heck is going on." And he said, "I don't know what the end is. I don't know how to correct the situation that's going on. I just want them to talk." And so And so that became, you know, our mission was, okay, for me it was, okay, that's what you want to say as an artist? You just want people to have a great conversation? Okay, fine, let's go. And so that was the motivation and the passion behind a lot of that early work, you know, of Spike. But I would say Do the Right Thing is your movie when it's talking about race and race relations in this country. Yeah.
Well, now we know what everyone needs to get their local shop for Christmas, and that is a poster of Do the Right Thing. I remember as a kid growing up, almost every pizzeria in New York, if you whether you were in New York City, the Bronx, in Long Island, or in Brooklyn, Queens, every single pizza shop had Do the Right Thing on there. I'd like to thank my panelists for being part of this. Thank you all for being part of the producers of TV and film. Go and check them out on Twitter, social media, and on their websites. Thank you for watching Afro Comic Con Virtual Con 2020, and we will all see you all very soon. Thank you all for watching us, and good night.
Thank you. All right, thanks,
Thank you very much. All right. Take it easy.
Take it easy, y'all.